Okay, so we are back now to start part 2 of our Chapter 13 lecture on emergency management. So we're going to go ahead and begin with the National Incident Management System. So in 2003, President George W. Bush issued Homeland Security Presidential Directive 5, and they call it HSPD-5 for short. The purpose of this was to increase the ability of the United States to respond to domestic emergencies by a system that would prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from terrorist attacks, major disasters, and also other emergencies. So this act, if you will, this directive, required that the Department of Homeland Security establish a single, comprehensive National Incident Management System, and it's called NIMS. And you can actually look this entire system up. You can find it. You can Google it, and you can find the entire directive if you're interested in reading through it. So NIMS, or the National Incident Management System, is a kind of a proactive approach to guide the actions of national, state, and local units of government, non-governmental organizations, and the private sector. And basically, NIMS allows these different organizations to work side by side, seamlessly together, right? Because they've all been trained to use the same organizational structures, concepts, and basically they speak the same language. So they all share a common operating picture, whether they're handling a terrorist attack, a major disaster, or any other type of major emergency. So NIMS, regardless of the cause, the size, the location, or the complexity of an incident, reduces the loss of life, damage to property, and harm to the environment. And all federal units and agencies are required to use NIMS. Now, for state, tribal, and local units of government, they're also they have an option to receive grants from one of several NIMS-related sources should they elect to use NIMS. So when I was the chief at the Rialto Police Department, our city and actually our department and our fire department, they were all to use the National Incident Management System, or NIMS, should there be some large type of incident. So a couple of things about NIMS. One is that it's standardized and flexible. And it's basically a template of all the best all-hazard incident management practices. And that template allows for responses to small incidents all the way up to large-scale catastrophic incidents. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. So it works with all different type of incidents. And I think that maybe that kind of makes sense. So, here's a little interesting chart that tells you what NIMS is and what it is not. So you can look at what it is. Again, it's a comprehensive, systematic approach to incident management. And again, it's a set of preparedness concepts for all kinds of hazards, right? So you can kind of read the rest on your own. And here's what it is not. So that gives you kind of a little bit of an idea. So, we're going to talk now about the NIMS template. And we're not going to go through every single thing in detail, but I am going to at least outline the template for you. So it's going to talk about, the template includes preparedness. It includes communication and information management. It includes resource management, It includes command and management. It also includes ongoing management and maintenance. And so those are things that are inclusive into the actual template itself, if that kind of makes sense. So when we talk about these, and if you want to know a little bit more, you can look on page 373 through 375 that talks a little bit more about the template. So I just kind of went over the actual big pieces of the template. So now we want to talk a little bit about preparedness. So we're gonna go through these and just kind of brush over them. So those 5 things, we're going to go back over them and just talk a little bit about each one. So preparedness means being ready to respond effectively to incidents. Threat assessments, planning, developing procedures and protocols, providing training, conducting exercises, and ensuring personnel and equipment are there. And you can see on the right, I have this example of the preparedness cycle. So number 1 in the NIMS template, again, is preparedness. So it also comes along with the need to be, to realistically determine the capabilities and resources that can be provided before, during, and after an incident or an event. Next, we have communications and information management. So information sharing in a timely manner is essential in making good decisions about coordination and operations and keeping responders informed and safe. And it must be able to transmit both voice, data, and video in real time. So this includes the Emergency Communication Preparedness Center. And again, this helps aid in the gaps in communication. So that's just a little bit more about communication and information management. Next, we have resource management. So NIMS defines standardized mechanisms and establishes requirements for processes to describe, inventory, mobilize, dispatch, track, and recover resources over the life cycle of an event. So basically, the right types of resources, personnel, equipment, and supplies, are needed at the right time, at the right place, and of course, in the right quantities, right? So, again, an example could be, wildfire management. What are those things that you would need in order to deal with a wildfire? So this is part of resource management. And then when you look at resource management, you can see here there's kind of a circle that you can use as it relates to resource management during an incident. So you can have the incident, and you're going to have to identify the requirements. You're going to have to order them, mobilize them, right? Meaning get them going, track and report where they're at, recover or demobilize, reimburse, and then inventory. And this is kind of the cycle, if you will, the resource management cycle at a kind of a large scale incident. Next would be command and management. And, this component of NIMS is designed to enable effective and efficient incident management and coordination by providing a flexible but standardized management structure. And the structure itself is based on 3 key elements. The first would be the incident command system. The second would be multi-agency coordination systems. And the third would be public information systems. And again, you can define these or go over them more in your textbook if you want. So here's the 3 separate components that fall underneath command and management. And then number 5, again, remember what we're talking about. We're talking about the template. So item number 5 in the template would be ongoing management and maintenance. So this would be, this would fall under FEMA's National Integration Center, or the NIC. And this provides strategic direction, oversight, and coordination of NIMS, and supports routine maintenance and continuous refinement of NIMS. And this also includes supporting technologies, things like the development and management of technology. So when you talk about the actual incident command system itself, and we've heard that word or those words a few times, what is this incident command system? So ICS, or the incident command system, was initially developed following a series of wildfires in California during the 70s. Property damage ran into the millions, and many people died or were injured as a result of these wildfires. And a surprising finding came out of the studies of each of these fires, if you will. Rarely, was a bad outcome the result of lack of equipment or failure of tactics. Instead, the single greatest contributor to a bad outcome was actually inadequate management. So factors hindering effective management included things like poor communication capabilities, and therefore the inability to direct and influence operations. And so these findings led to the development of ICS. So the Incident Command System, or ICS, is a vital part of NIMS, and presents or represents a standardized, on-scene, all-hazards incident management approach that allows for the integration of facilities, equipment, personnel, procedure, and communications operating within a common organizational structure. And ICS also enables a coordinated response among various jurisdictions, both public and private, as well as establishes a common process for planning and managing diverse resources from a bunch of different places, or multiple venues, if you will. So more specifically, ICS is a standardized, on-scene, all hazards management structure and process that basically does a few really important things. And there's going to be 4 that we're going to talk about. So number 1, it allows for the facilities, equipment, personnel to be operating within a single organizational structure. Number 2, it enables a coordinated response among various responders to incidents. Number 3, it establishes common processes for planning and managing resources. So, for example, most incident communication is not based on dispatch codes. Everything is communicated in plain English, right? Now, there is an encryption system when you're talking about terrorist attacks, but for the most part, everything is kind of in English, and everybody can understand it. And then number 4, it communicates and coordinates with its Emergency Operations Center, or the EOC, and you've probably heard that before, which is normally activated if the ICS commander requests additional support and or resources. So it kind of looks like this. So you've got this unified command, if you will, and we'll talk about, the different parts of it. But it has everything under kind of one umbrella. So as we're going to talk about in a minute, you're going to have the operations section. You're going to have the planning section, and there's going to be somebody running each of these. You'll have the logistics section, and then you'll have the finance section. And here's, this is kind of the unified command. And off to the right, you'll have, say a public information officer, a safety officer, and a liaison. But then you've got all of these other sections, and underneath you have little subsections. So hopefully that kind of makes sense a little bit to everybody. So when you talk about the incident command system, the first arriving emergency responder to any type of major incident is they automatically become the incident commander. And they stay in that role until they're replaced. Because what you don't want to do is have 10 people trying to run kind of an incident, right? Because you need one person that's kind of in charge. So again, the first arriving emergency responder to an incident automatically becomes the incident commander and remains in that role until they're replaced. And basically there's a couple of other, there's 3 other things that happen. So number 1, a more senior person arrives and they take command. Number 2, he or she needs rest or is injured and the EOC director appoints a replacement. Or number 3, he or she is replaced for cause or other reason and the EOC director designates a new incident commander. So that's kind of the role of the first person, kind of arriving on scene. Now, one of the most important elements of the incident command system is the development of what we call a unified command. And unified command is a structure that combines all incident commanders from all major organizations or responding agencies involved in an incident underneath one umbrella. And the idea here is to link all organizations together and provide a forum for all agencies to coordinate a specific response to an incident based on the combined experience of all of the agencies responding. Does that kind of make sense? So you have this unified command. So, for example, this is the commander, and the unified command is that all these people, they're all unified underneath this one person right here. And this helps, these decisions are made kind of by consensus. So everybody gets a little bit of input, but you still need one person in charge, right? So under the unified command, decisions are made by consensus of those leaders who are actually on scene, so that an integrated and efficient response can kind of be carried out or occur. So that's the definition again of unified command. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center. And a lot of you have probably heard a definition of an EOC. So the EOC has the primary purpose of providing support to the incident commander. And kind of in a broader role is to provide support such as incident coordination, resource allocation, and information collection, analysis, and dissemination. And there are also levels of activation when it comes to an EOC. So if you can kind of think back, I mean, if there's going to be a major incident, depending upon how the incident has progressed, your EOC might stay closed. It might open on standby, it might open on partial, and it might open on full. It depends what the incident is. So these are levels of activation, right? So we'll kind of talk about them. So a standby is basically a warning alert to the EOC staff that an activation might occur. So an example would be due to a hurricane that is, let's say, 72 hours away from making landfall. So you're going to put your EOC on standby. Now, a partial activation is basically, for instance, the interstate that runs through the city, county is blocked by, let's say, debris. And there are some medical emergencies requiring a limited level of EOC services. So you might have a partial activation. And then finally, you might have a full-scale activation. And this might be where there's a violent lightning storm with winds that are gusting, let's say, 70 miles an hour, with softball-sized hail causing a series of ongoing fires. And there's some signs of roofs that are being torn off in a business district and broken windows, which now starts to lead to looting in that area. And maybe there's a school bus that's been overturned with unknown injuries. That would be a full activation. And if you're old enough, any of you, if you're old enough to remember the countdown to Y2K. So I'm going to give you a second to kind of think about if you remember what Y2K was. Does anybody kind of remember what that whole thing was? So this was kind of kind of an interesting thing, right? When you talk about Y2K and what it was supposed to be. So I'll give you a little bit of hints. Maybe the calendar or computers breaking down. You remember that? So this was like the Y2K kind of bug. So it was also called the year 2000 bug or the millennium bug. And it was basically supposed to be this problem in the coding of computer systems that was projected to create basically havoc in everybody's computer and everyone's networks around the world at the beginning of the year in 2000. So this was like Y2K. And actually, I can remember in the city of Rialto, we activated our EOC. And of course, nothing happened. But that's an example of an EOC activation. So again, levels of activation, standby, partial, and full. So how does it now all fit together? So let's put it all together. So we're going to talk about the National Preparedness System on how everything kind of fits all together. So again, every day we're taking steps to keep our nation safe and ensure that we can come back or thrive after disasters occur. Whether we face, risks related to earthquakes, cyber attacks, or even chemical spills, our goal is shared safety and resilience. Now, the National Preparedness System outlines an organized process for everyone in the whole country to move forward with their preparedness activities and achieve the national preparedness goal or goals. So this national preparedness system basically has 6 parts, and let's talk about them briefly. Number 1 would be identifying and assessing risks. So this part involves collecting historical and recent data on existing, potential, and perceived threats and hazards. And the results of these risk assessments form the basis for some of the remaining steps. Number 2 would be estimating capability requirements. So next, you can determine the specific capabilities and activities to best address those risks. And some capabilities may already exist, and some may need to be built in or improved on. And FEMA provides a list of core capabilities related to protection, prevention, mitigation, response, and recovery. Remember the 5 mission areas of preparedness. Number 3 would be building and sustaining capabilities, and this involves figuring out the best way to use limited resources to build capabilities. And you can use the risk assessment to kind of prioritize resources and address the highest probability or highest consequence threats. Number 4, planning to deliver capabilities. So because preparedness efforts involve and affect the whole community, it's really important that you coordinate your plans with other organizations, right? And this includes all parts of the whole community. So individuals, businesses, nonprofit organizations, faith-based groups, and also all levels of government. Number 5 would be validating capabilities. So now it's time to see if your activities are working as intended. So maybe participating in exercises or simulations or other activities that help you identify gaps that you might have in your plans, right? And that kind of makes sense. So testing stuff out. And then finally, number 6 would be reviewing and updating. So it's important to regularly review and update all of your capabilities, your resources, and your plans, because risks and resources evolve. And so you should really be prepared, for these different levels of basically evolving, etc. So what then are the national preparedness goals? So the national preparedness goal is to provide a consistent, common structure and language for emergency management and is scalable, meaning it can be used for small emergencies and large ones. It incorporates, again, the all hazards model and it's capabilities based. And it also incorporates whole community, which means it includes FEMA, federal agencies, state and local governments, non-governmental organizations, private sector, and also individuals. And the National Preparedness System is the instrument that emergency management relies on to build, sustain, and deliver capabilities to achieve the goal of a secure and resilient nation. And finally, the National Preparedness Report is an annual assessment of basically progress toward delivering the core capabilities outlined in the National Preparedness Goal. And in this report, it's going to identify the strengths and progress and also the weaknesses and gaps that still remain. Okay, so we made it through, and that will conclude part 2 of our Chapter 13 lecture on emergency management.